Episode 145, Helping Those Who Have Experienced a Baby Loss with Amy Watson.
Welcome to Latter-day Life Coaches, the podcast where each episode is a conversation between me, Heather Rackham, and one of my amazing coach colleagues. Each coach here is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and a highly trained, experienced life coach making a great impact in the lives of their clients. And together, we have one main goal, helping you live your best life no matter what. You ready for this conversation with a coach? Here we go.
We all experience loss in our lives, but when the loss happens early during pregnancy or even soon after, many don't know what to do to support the grieving parents. Coach Amy Watson experienced 2 baby losses, one at 14 weeks and then a stillbirth at 39 weeks. She now works with women who have experienced similar loss and helps them navigate the grieving process. She is on the podcast today giving many helpful tips on how to deal with baby loss if you have experienced it yourself, or if you know someone who has experienced it, what you can do to support a family member or friend through this process. Amy is honest but loving in this conversation with Heather and brings a lot of hope to those dealing with baby loss. If you or someone you know could use Amy's help, please make sure to check out her podcast and website information so you can work with her. Please enjoy this episode.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Latter-day Life Coaches, and thanks for being with us today. And a special thanks to Amy Watson, who is joining me. Hey, Amy.
Hey, happy to be here. I'm excited.
I am so happy to have you here. I think that the subject we're going to talk about today is going to be so interesting for people to listen to, and one I'm excited about because we haven't ever discussed this topic here. But before we get there, I would love for you to be able to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you. And I'm sure in that introduction, it'll also kind of come out this topic that we're going to talk about today.
So a little bit about me. I am a mom of 6 living children, and I have 2 babies that are in heaven waiting for us. I am a coach for families, parents who have been through this type of loss. And just a little bit about me. I love to DIY, I love to bake. I love the gospel. My mom joined the church when I was probably 6 or 7. I remember her getting baptized, but I just remember always loving it and having a testimony. And that has carried me through a lot of the hard times that I've been through. But I've kind of been on this journey, this path that I think a lot of us relate to. Like, we may not have chosen where we ended up, but starting with the loss of our daughter, I just really took this deep dive into grief and loss, and how do we even do this? Like, what do I do? And so my personality is, and I don't know if people here are like Enneagram, but I found out I'm an Enneagram 5, which is like a learner person. So I dove into all the books. I dove into all the things to just figure out, how do we survive trials? How do we help our children through trials? How do we really solidify our faith when life is really hard? And through all of that research and just figuring out, listening to my own heart and my own lessons that I've learned along the way, I think I've just found a lot of love and hope and goodness in my life, not in spite of what I've been through, but because of what I've been through.
Because I think that's a great distinction, right? It's not in spite of, but it is because of. And it takes on a different meaning when we look at it that way too. It's almost like it's sanctified. The meaning, what we've been through, it carries a different purpose behind it when we can look at it that way.
Yeah. And if you don't mind, I have a little something I say when I'm not on talking to people who are grieving or, in a baby loss space, because we are going to talk about that today. I just have a couple of things that I like to say. Number one is, talking about baby loss is not contagious. Actually, what I've found the most is people who have been through loss themselves feel really, really alone. And they often say, I wish someone would have told me that babies die and miscarriages happen and you can have a stillbirth like right up until the end, or all of these things that we don't talk about because it's not the most comfortable topic. So anybody
Yeah.
listening who's like, I don't know if I want to talk about that or listen to something about that, I would just encourage you to listen, because the flip side of that is, even though the babies died and that's sad, they also lived. And I think when it all happens in such a brief moment, we don't get to talk about the part that they lived and they matter and they're loved and like they're miracles and they're so amazing and their
Yeah.
families care about them and miss them. So really important. And then I always say it's like 100% possible that either you have been touched by loss yourself or you love someone who has. So I think just so important to bring this conversation to the table. And I really appreciate you being willing to do that here today.
Yeah, I do think it is important. And like you said, it's 100% chance that you or somebody you love has been touched by this. And we will cover all of that a little bit today for the person who has experienced it personally, and for those of us who have been touched by people that we love who have gone through that. And I think it's important to talk about both sides of that. Like, how can I as a person support somebody who has been through that experience, and vice versa. So I think we can get to that too, probably a little bit later. But I have a brother who passed away when I was younger. He was 8 months old and I was 8, and watched, I remember very vividly so much of it, but watching your parents go through something like that is for sure a life-changing experience. And as a sibling, it was a life-changing experience. But I would have loved to have had skills and tools like you and what you teach at the time. So I'm glad that you're doing
Yeah.
this.
Oh, I'm sorry. What was his name?
His name is Ryan, and
Oh,
we celebrate his birthday every year. I actually, people that are just listening to this can't see this, but I have this little bear that sits behind me on my office
yeah.
chair back there. My mom made us it each a bear, and it wears his clothes, some of his clothes that he had, and he's just always here with me in my office. And anyway, I
Oh, that's
love
so sweet.
keeping his memory alive. But anyway, I'm not meaning to make this about me. I
No, well, like
just
I
think
said,
that
it's
it's
just like the
important.
more you talk about it, the more, especially people say, like when it happens to you, you're like, oh my goodness, I had no idea how
Yeah.
many people are touched by the loss of a baby, whether it's in pregnancy or after.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's great to just connect because we all have a story.
Yeah. So there are many different forms of baby loss, right? Like we talked about my brother who died at 8 months old. He died of SIDS, but can you go over the range of baby loss that you have seen in your clients? Because I think sometimes we don't even give thought to the full range of it.
We say a loss is a loss, right? We don't want to categorize it because a lot of times that's what happens.
Right.
Like we seem to think, well, if you're only 5 weeks, like it should only hurt this much, or if you were full term, or if it was, a baby that you knew and loved for 8 months, that there's some sort of hierarchy of pain, or like we give people time to grieve, but there really, really isn't. So if you have that desire to be a parent in your heart and like you're not able to have it and to like answer that with a living child, that is a loss.
Yeah.
And when then there's like little embryos and, miscarriage, there's really unfortunate circumstances where people have to terminate for medical reasons. We call that TFMR, where like either the baby or the mother are not able to survive or would not have a good life and would have a lot of suffering. And then stillbirth, which a lot of people like miscarriage, stillbirth, there's like these gray areas of like, generally a lot of times people say before 20 weeks it's a miscarriage, after 20 weeks it's stillbirth. But again, there's all different definitions. And
Yeah.
and then just infant loss for whatever reason. But unfortunately there are, and I've been in this world for a decade, and I just have to say, like, it is a miracle that we're all here given the amount of things there are that have to go right, for us to be here, because there's just many, many things that can cause these losses, and a lot of losses are unexplained, which is like another layer of it can be really
Yeah.
hard not
I think
knowing.
we really take for granted our medical technology and experience, like it's not so long ago, like early 1900s, 1800s, when the mortality rate was so different than it is now even. And I just really think we take that for granted. Like you said, there's so many things that have to go right in order for us to be here.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's room for improvement
Oh,
because, I mean, we're not talking about advocacy here, but for sure, there are some things we can do to prevent some stillbirths that a lot of us are just not taught and we don't have the information. So I know there's people out there who are, in the honor of their babies, really fighting to change that. So
yeah.
that's something that I think is really important. Again, with awareness is like, well, what do we do with that? Right. And not just say, well, this just happens. Like, cause that's what it's kind of been, is we just shrug our shoulder and say, well, it happens.
Right.
Try
There's
again.
still so much. There's so much for us to still learn. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay. So when women come to you after the loss of a baby, what are some of the main things they are struggling with? Like, I can imagine some of it, and I'm sure there's a lot of it that I can't even comprehend.
I mean, for some people, and there could be people listening, they had like a miscarriage and it wasn't like, it didn't affect them. They aren't like, kind of, it does happen. And a lot of people go on and there's no like shame in that. Like, sometimes people say you should be sadder about this. And that's not true. Like, you get to decide. Every experience is so different. But I would say the people that come to me and the people I work with are kind of deeply grieving the loss of this child, or the loss of the dream, or the loss of the family they had envisioned, and just trying to figure out, well, what do I do now? What do I do next? How do I even navigate this? Like, the simplest of things, like small talk questions of like, how many kids do you have? Or, helping your children through this, because they're grieving and you're grieving and you're all just trying to do your best and you don't know what's happening. And I also work with a lot of pregnancy after loss clients, because once you've been through a loss, it can be really scary to try again. And once kind of all these things that can go wrong, because that's kind of a side effect of the amazing support we do have, and the internet and like Facebook groups, and we have so much more support and community, but you do hear a lot of stories. And so it can be really scary to be pregnant again. So yeah, I think that's really a lot of it. And then relationships, I think relationships after loss can be tricky, whether it's like your marriage, your partner, whoever. That can be tricky, but also like extended family is a lot of times, which you probably hear often as coaches. It's that sister-in-law that's pregnant at the same time as you, and it's or whoever that says the wrong thing, or they don't remember the baby's birthday, they don't acknowledge your child. That can be really, really hard. And especially as members of the church, and we love our families and we want to have good relationships, and then it being really, really hard, and you being angry or frustrated, and then you feel guilty. So it's like this whole cycle of like, I really hate how people are treating me during my grief, but I should be nice. And so, yeah, we talk a lot about that, of just like figuring out what you want, taking back control of something that is so out of control. Because it's, for most people, just like a complete out of nowhere shock. And you're like knocked off your feet and you're broken in a million pieces. And what I do is try to help put those pieces back together and try to help you as you figure out what's next and what path you want to be on.
I would imagine that it probably, I don't know, never really feels like those pieces get put back together, at least in the way that they were, right? Like they're put together probably and form something completely different, but it's and different for everybody, I'm sure.
Yeah. And I think that's another kind of thing you have to let go of in grief, is you're not going to be the same person, and the people around you might want you to be, and you want to be. But that's where we find, a lot of pain and suffering. I'm just saying, like, I used to just be able to laugh. I used to just do this. I used to whatever. And it's like, but that's not reality anymore. but it doesn't mean it's worse. Like,
Yeah, that's true.
you're still you, and you're just you in a different chapter. And like, what do we want? What do you want? So I think
Yeah,
we
that's a good
forget that
point.
you get a choice.
Yeah. I have a couple of family members who have been touched from this in this spectrum in some way, and I know from talking with them there's this piece of kind of our religious philosophy or our theology of, we're commanded to multiply and replenish the earth, and with these two siblings, them not being able to feel like they are able to fulfill that or do the thing that they feel like they were even put here on the earth to do, in not bringing a baby into this world the way that they thought, is, I think, has been hard for them. And I mean, I know it's been hard for them. It took a lot of work to get through that pain, but sometimes there's also this thing of like, maybe I was doing it wrong. Did I do something wrong? Like, we bring in sort of this like vision of God that we have, that we are deserving or not deserving of something. And I just want to know, I just wonder how you address, that's a broad range of things, but I'm curious how you address those situations.
It is like, it's that classic question of, why do bad things happen to good people?
Yep.
And so many people ask it, but it can feel like really, really personal.
Mm-hmm.
Like when your own child dies inside your own body, like that is about as personal of a death as you can experience. So I think it's really about figuring out that relationship with God, and maybe needing to mature it, and maybe needing to find answers that are different than before. I think a lot of times what happens in the gospel, totally with good intentions, is that part where we say, oh, we know the baby's in the celestial kingdom, and isn't that great? Like, they got a free pass to the celestial kingdom. And or if you look at the eternal perspective, you just won't be sad. And so people start to think, I don't have enough faith because I am like on the floor in a ball, like devastated. And so I would just say that's normal. Like, yes, we have the atonement. Yes, we have the gospel. Yes, we have eternal perspective. Yes, we have covenants. And those things are amazing. But it still hurts. Losing a child is a heartbreak that is, indescribable. And it's okay. But also, we understand that we have heavenly parents who know that pain, and they can and will help us. And we have a history of so many people. I think we kind of idolize like the pioneer mothers that buried their babies on the plains and things like that. So we do have a really interesting theology. And I think we think, well, they were just so much stronger. I couldn't do that. When I think about them, I think their hearts broke just as much as ours, right? We just don't have like all their Facebook posts about it or whatever.
Right. Right.
But you do read some of their stories, and it really hurts. And when I was in my phase after our daughter was stillborn at full term, I was like reading every single, that was back in the days of those Teachings of the Prophets manuals.
Yeah.
If anyone remembers, you can find them probably at DI if you don't have them, or in your local church library. But every single book had a chapter on trials and how to overcome trials. And when you read those, I don't think I found don't quote me, but like, I don't think there was a prophet who didn't lose a child, or multiple. And reading about their story, I mean, Joseph and Emma, like, we know that they lost so many babies. Each person will be different. I had 2 losses, a stillbirth and a miscarriage. My stillbirth, I found a lot of peace. I felt everyone's prayers. I saw the tender mercies. I like clung on to my faith. And with our miscarriage, which was our second loss, I was super mad at Heavenly Father, because all I had wanted was for this baby to live. And that was the only thing I prayed for. Just let it live, let it live, let it live. We saw the baby at like 11 weeks, just bouncing around on the ultrasound. That's like what I call the gummy bear phase. And at 14 weeks, there just wasn't a heartbeat. And we had all these complications. I had complications during surgery. We had just moved. We had like a ton of hard things going on at the same time. And so I kind of threw a little tantrum and was like, this isn't fair. I try to be such a good person. I try to, like, I've helped all these other families. I've been serving and like devoting so much time and energy to helping other people. And this still happens. And I think we can get into that where we're blaming God or we're blaming ourselves. Like, did I do something wrong? Is this a punishment? Is this God telling me I'm not good enough? Like you said, the people in your family, like maybe I don't deserve to have children. And it's totally normal to blame ourselves or to be upset, but it's not your fault. Like it's never your fault. And I don't believe that God punishes us by taking our babies away from this earth. I think it's something that happens because we live in a fallen natural world. And if you look at nature, the young are vulnerable. And I don't know the reason why. I don't know why so many people throughout history and now have to go through this type of loss. It's going to be one of those questions that we get hopefully answered right away in the next life. But for me, I just think like this happens because we are mortal and it's really, really tough. And sometimes, like with my first loss, I was like, everything happened how it was supposed to. You know, I was able to come to that piece of like, this was her path. She was only supposed to be in our lives for 39 and a half weeks. And with my other baby, I really took probably years and years and years of being angry, kind of feeling like that ceiling of heaven was shut, you know, but really like I'm the one that's closing that door. And just figuring it all out. And then finally coming to a place where I said, I'm tired. Like, I'm tired of being angry at God. I'm tired of like feeling picked on. I'm tired of just like this heaviness. And so I changed what I wanted, right? I changed my result line of what I wanted. I hired a coach, like a grief coach. And I said, hey, I'm tired of being mad at God. I'm tired of blaming myself. I'm tired. Just work through all of it. We pulled out all the yucky, scary, dark thoughts that I had. We just looked at them. And then she told me, she said, Amy, like, you just don't have to think this anymore. And it was like a super powerful moment in my life. I'd already found thought work. I'd already like made so much progress. I'd done so many things, but like to fully put that down was such an incredible gift. And it was something I knew I needed to do before I could help my clients, like my future clients. I was in coach training at the time when I hired her. And I was like, I'm still hung up on these, you know, couple of things. And so I can say honestly, like anything you've gone through, any pain, any heartbreak, any blame, any anger, all of those dark feelings and thoughts, you can let go when you're ready, when you want to, right? Because there's no rush and there's no rules with grief.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, even that piece of not like being able to put it down, and we believe in the atonement of our Savior, and they start to think, well, it's not going away. Why is he not helping me? What am I doing wrong? So then there's like that double piece, right? Like I must have deserved what I got or something. Like I must have not done something right. I wasn't able to keep this baby. And I'm also not getting the help to lay this down and give this pain away. And my heart breaks when people have that struggle and have to wrestle with that, reconcile it. But I think it's so important to recognize that it is timing, right? Like sometimes like there's a process that we have to go through, and he is helping us. Like I'm certain he helped you find the tools that you needed to be able to lay that down, right? And he needed, like, it's part of the process. And anytime we can partner with our heavenly parents and with our Savior, it's different. It adds something else to it. But we have to do our part too, which is seeking out those things that we can do too to help ourselves.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Another part of the gospel you just reminded me of, though, is we sometimes do. Maybe it's the culture, right? The culture
Yeah.
is like if you just work hard enough and you pray hard enough and you do enough things,
Yeah.
then you won't have to ever feel pain. That's just not true.
No.
And grief is a beautiful thing. And what I teach my clients is to like make it your friend, bring it in, bring it close, get to know it. Right. And then you can stop thinking there's something wrong with me. Right. Because when we understand grief, we understand that it's so unique. Like every person's experience is 100% unique, but also there's a lot of universal things that happen, things that we go through, things that we
Yeah.
think. And so that's really, really important, I think, is like having the knowledge of like, oh, that's grief. And that's a thought that can really help us. It's just, that's grief, right? If I burst into tears at Target because I saw the diapers out of the corner of my eye, that's just grief. That doesn't mean like I'm not doing this right or I thought I was doing so good. A lot of times we'll say, I thought I was doing so good. And then I burst into tears at Target. It's like, you're still doing good. Like, this is just it. This is what it is. And so you can just have so much more love and compassion for yourself and not judge yourself, because we do all have these like internal things from society and from church culture and the gospel that sometimes can make it harder. But again, we also have so much goodness in the gospel that can help you if you let it help you and if you want it to help you. Because like I said, for a while I wanted to just be really mad and not do it. And that's okay too.
And that's part of grief too, right? That's part of getting to know grief is anger accompanies it oftentimes. So I think I love that you describe it that way. It's probably seems really scary to feel like you're going to get to be acquainted with grief as you would a friend, but it's important. That's an important process, an important thing to do.
Yeah.
So that I'm certain that we have listeners today who may not have experienced this firsthand, but like we said previously, know people, certain that you know somebody who has experienced this. And I want to know what we need to know, those of us who have not experienced it. How can we be of support? Like, what should we say? What shouldn't we say? Like, what are some things that we can do to be of help? And what are the things we should hold back so that we don't make it worse?
Yeah. And I think this is tricky territory because I think what happens the most is we don't want to say the wrong thing. We don't want to do the wrong thing. Again, we like have these tender hearts. We're born to serve. We're raised to serve. And then we're like, but what if I do it wrong? And I upset them or I offend them or I whatever. So even to preface this, I always say just do what's on your heart, do what comes naturally to you, do what's within your wheelhouse of talents and your time and your energy, but do something. Something is better than nothing. And I always say be there after the casserole stop coming. Because for most people who are grieving, that first week, month, year, like you're in a fog. You don't even know what's going on. Specifically with like pregnancy loss, you're postpartum. Like people forget that like I delivered a baby at 3 a.m. and by 11 a.m. I was at home, like quote unquote resting, like devastated, had left my baby at the hospital and was just home alone. Like my milk came in as I buried my daughter. Like those things still happen after, I would say like anywhere after about halfway, like their milk comes in. Like there's all these reminders and it's just really, really hard. So use technology, use your phone, like set reminders. A lot of times for lost parents, they would say, when you have a living baby, you're like, oh, baby's 1 month and I can take a picture with a cute little thing and I can post it online. Well, lost parents know when it's been a month. They know when it's been 2 months. They're counting those milestones too, but like nobody's counting with them. Set it up so you can send them a little text on the baby's birthday, on the baby's due date, on like holidays that mean a lot. Just be there and listen, and you don't have to fix it. I think that's my other main point I would leave It's just, it's not your job to fix it. It's not your job to find meaning for them. It's not your job to give them even gospel principles that helped you in your hard times. Trust that they're going to figure that out. We're really uncomfortable with grief. So, really, what we're trying to do is like, we want them to feel better so we can feel better.
Yep,
And so
absolutely.
that's when we kind of do those things like cliches and saying things that, we just aren't in the place to say. Like, they will find their own meaning. They will find things that help them. Like, it's not your job to do that for them. Your job is just be there, love them, listen, and let them be sad and honor their baby. Like I said, losing a baby is a unique grief because we don't have pictures, right? We don't have a lot of time. We don't have memories. Like, not many people met the baby, or maybe like nobody met the baby. So use the baby's name. Remember them, because that's what they're afraid of, that nobody is going to remember their baby. So it means a lot to just do that. But for sure, I think this goes with across the board, just like the whole, let me know if I can do anything. Just don't say that. That's one where I could say, just don't say that ever.
Yeah.
They're grieving. They don't know what they need, and they don't have the strength to reach out and ask you. So be very specific and say, hey, can I walk your dog? Can I take your kids? Or I've got the day off on Wednesday. Can I come fold laundry with you? And make it really easy. But just love them. And it's hard to do that because we're like, I want to fix it. But
we do. We wish we could. We wish we could take it, but we can't.
Yeah.
So, and I say that even we wish we could take it. And for the most part, no, we don't. We don't want to take it from something, right? Like, I don't want to experience it either, but we need each other. And that's why we're here. We're here to love and support one another. So on our journey.
Remember that the baby lived, though. If you can just give that chance, like I said, using the name, asking questions. Like, I, as a volunteer, go into hospitals and help, like when a baby is stillborn. And that is the parent's worst day. And I try to always make sure I say, congratulations on your son. Like, he's beautiful. Look at his little toes. So cute. People don't get congratulations. They don't get, to talk about their pregnancy, to talk about the birth, because it's a birth, no matter how far along you were. So let people share their baby's life and their memories and ask questions about it.
Thank you. Thank you for opening. I would not have thought about that. Like, even just that, like thinking to congratulate somebody. Cause I guess part of me would feel like, oh, will I offend them? Like, is that the wrong thing to say? But I appreciate you opening our hearts and our minds to things that could be useful and needful at that time. Amy, before we go, can you share with people where they can find you for them or for somebody that they love? I just would love for people to know.
Yes. So it's pretty easy. Everything is Smooth Stones. So I have the Smooth Stones podcast, which is like a how-to guide for life after loss. And I would love if you would send any of your friends there. I've been doing it for 4 years at this point. I love it so much. And it's basically any question you could have about life after loss. I've got answers over there. And I also have an episode for how to help someone you love after loss, if you want to go check that out for like more ideas. But my website is smoothstonescoaching.com, and mostly on Instagram at amy.smoothstonescoaching. But I'm super open. I always say, like, all my clients just have to deal with me for the rest of their life because I like want updates and I just love them, and I totally just will talk to anybody anytime. So if you need advice, if you're struggling, please reach out. Like, I say that honestly and truly. This is what I do in honor of my babies. And, my daughter, Lauren, and River is our baby that we don't know the gender. But I do this for them and because of them. And I think it's just like one of those callings that I walked into. And like a lot of people say, it would just be so sad, or how do you even do it? And I don't know. I find a lot of joy in loving and helping these families. So,
well, what a legacy you are leaving with Lauren and River's lives through you. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks for being here, Amy. And thank you to all who are listening. And Please share with those that you love. Have a great one, everybody. Hey, we just wanted to thank you for spending part of your day here with us at Latter-day Life Coaches and being part of this conversation. Share this with your friends so that you can have a conversation with them on this topic as well. And as always, subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Have a good one, my friends.